Hello, I'm Pastor Joey, and welcome to the discussion.
And I'm Pastor Josh. We're so excited to get started here. We got a couple of our veterans here, and we're just going to have them introduce themselves.
All right, well, we have Paul Tarnowski. How long have you been at the church
Well,
for?
we should start with
Damaris?
She's our ranking member of the veterans.
Ladies first?
Ladies
great.
first.
And officers.
And officers, why? What do you mean officers?
She's an officer.
But you said and officers. What does that mean?
So you have two parts in the military. You have the people who are giving the orders, the officers, and then the commissioned people, and then the enlisted are just everyday grunts who are doing a job and obeying the orders of those appointed over them.
QED, you guys.
Basically, you're saying
Me and my dad
Are
are
non-commissioned
officers. We have a job within the military that we're responsible for, and then we report up to the officers about what our tasks are. And
I love that.
So that they can give accountability to their superiors going all the way up to the commanding officer.
Oh, that's great. Well, Ms. Damaris, it's great to have you with us today. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Well, it's my honor to be here, and thank you to them for taking me as first as a lady and as an officer. And it's an honor for me. Well, I joined and I was in the U.S. Army National Guard for 22 years. And I started with my first 5 years with the 544 Military Police Company back home in Puerto Rico. And after I graduated from nursing school, I moved to Philadelphia. I joined the 108th Combat Support Hospital, and that's where I served the rest of my almost 20-some years.
20-something years?
Yeah, so
That's fantastic.
actually, for 22 years. And then after that, I retired. I would have stayed. I really liked it. I really liked my time, my service. But, you know, it's a time where you're married, you have kids, and you had to get out to take care of your kids. So that's when I got out.
You do. You have a wonderful family, and they all attend the church.
Yes,
And we're happy
yes.
to have all of you with us.
And I always thank the Lord for that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I heard that you met your husband in the service. Is that correct?
Yes, at the time I was not an officer. I was still in nursing school, so I went to a primary leadership development course, which is to get ranks of sergeant, and I went to that training, and he was my instructor just for one day.
Oh.
And that caught my eye, but you know, you were not allowed to talk to your instructors. So one day we talked during the break time, but never talked again. And 6 months later, we found each other at another training. And because he was not my instructor, then that's where we started talking.
Did he carry that through life where you weren't allowed to respond to him as he was giving instructions? No, I'm joking. Oh, that's great. We love Pastor Carlos. I know he passed away a few years back. And what a great man of God. I'll tell you what, he left quite a legacy. That's awesome.
The Lord has shown me so many things after that, yes.
Now, how long have you been out of the military for?
I've been out of the military since 2013.
How was
So
it?
it's been, yeah.
How was it like kind of assimilating yourself coming out of the military?
Well, it wasn't difficult because since I was in the National Guard, although I did a few times, 3 months, 6 months active, but because I was already accustomed to the civilian life, it wasn't a difficult transition. And I came out. I still missed going away those times and going away the weekends and wanting to go back. But, you know, I said, Lord, you need to give me peace, and I have to now fall in step with what I'm supposed to do. And I let the Lord guide me, and here I am today.
Wow, praise God. I'll tell you what, I hear a lot of stories of people in the military for a long period of time, not even as long as you have been in, and they have trouble assimilating back into society. And maybe that's something that our country needs to take a little more serious in the future when it comes to those. But I'll let you guys touch on that as well. But let's move on to...
Yeah, who's the next in rank?
So technically, I'm next in rank.
Oh,
But
this is
I'm-
better.
Oh,
Better,
that's
better.
juicy.
For those of you who don't
Hold
know,
on, he just
this is
passed
the
me
son.
recently, yeah.
This is the son of Paul Tarnowski.
So, but to be fair, his time with the DoD as a civilian who's employed by the Department of Defense, he reached a status called GS-11, Step
12.
GS-12, apologies, Step 10. And that's borderline being officer rank within the military. So when he went on ships, he had more authority than if I've ever been on a ship I would ever have. even as a first-class petty officer. So, again, I'm going to have to defer to him, not only because he's my father, but he's also...
But I can still beat him. And
he technically, by technicality, outranks me, yes.
And besides, he's not really Navy. He's a CB.
Yes, there's a vast
the
difference.
difference?
Okay, so see, I play in dirt. He plays on boats.
That's good.
We don't get dirty on the show.
Yeah, we're the CBs are a cross between Marines and Army. We are a construction force within the Navy. During World War II, the civilians that got killed at Pearl Harbor, they realized that they cannot put civilians into harm's way. So Rear Admiral Ben Morrell came up with the idea of employing a unit within the Navy to forward deploy, to build bases, to build airstrips during the World War II. And that's where the CBs came about. We became
So explain a CB. It's a construction.
It's a mobile
battalion.
construction battalion that forward deploy. The Army and Marines have something similar, but they are not as versatile as CBs can be. While they learn specific jobs, I learned how to operate everything from transportation to cranes to earth moving equipment. So if it has 4 wheels or more, I can operate it.
Wow.
Okay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you met your wife in the Navy as well?
Yes, but before we get on this, let's talk about the big guy.
But you didn't meet your wife in the Navy.
Are you building the stuff that he's using essentially?
Actually,
No, so I don't interact with most of the stuff that he does. There's times where the Navy and CBs do overlap when we're constructing bases for the Navy, but
well, they are Navy. But
we are still
they're
the
the
Navy.
ground pounder side.
So do they consider themselves better than?
In fact, nobody knows us. we
Well,
are
the
better.
difference- Right. The difference is they have weapons training where I did not have to have weapons
Oh,
training.
interesting.
Okay, so what did you get in your
All
training?
right. I was trained as an electronic technician. So when I came in, it was right before we pulled out of Vietnam. I was in from 74 to 83 active duty. And then when I came out, the DOD picked me up and I worked for the Department of the Navy for another 29 years. And that's where I was on all the cruisers and all the ships and whatever was floating and they needed navigational support, that was me.
Oh, wow.
So
And then I worked.
techie, as they would call it in today's day.
I was a techie, yeah. So we were trained in all electronics. So I came out basically out of boot camp and then was sent right to ET school, and a year in electronics school up at Great Lakes, and then out at San Diego, and then we come out of school as an E4, whereas kids who go right in the military come out as an E3. In the Navy, that would be a seaman. In the Army, I guess that would be a private or a corporal.
Corporal
PFC?
C4.
Yeah, E3. So I came out as a third class petty officer right out of school. So the Navy works this way. Once you are rated, in other words, once you have a job and you are set in that job, you are considered rated. So my rate was electronic technician. I was trained in radar, but then my first command, they put me in as a communications tech.
So in other words, you're a pretty smart guy.
Welcome to the government.
Depends on who you
Welcome
ask.
to the government. Plus, I'm the guy right out of school. I was the guy. I always wanted to be on a ship because I wanted to sail around the world.
Yeah.
My goal was to get out of Philadelphia and see the world. So I asked for all these ships. I was told, hey, listen, just get something big because they ride really well. You probably won't get seasick on it.
Did you get seasick?
No, I never. I got seasick one time, and that was my fault.
Oh, really?
How does that happen?
That happens.
Yeah, right.
It's my fault. About seasick. I looked at the sea too much.
All right, for all those going to sea out there, listen up. Here's how you get seasick. I had been at sea several times, but I had never seen an unrep, which is what a replenishment at sea. So I was on. I can't remember. Oh, I was on the Monterey, I believe it was.
Hold on, we have to explain.
Yeah, let's-
when you're resupplying at sea, you have 2 boats that are moving at the same time.
Oh no.
Next to each other,
It's a
and
highly coordinated effort.
they're only not even they're like half a football field apart from each other. If that,
Yeah.
they're very close.
So when you're that close, and the ships are taking on fuel and cargo and so on, so you initially start, they'll fire a monkey ball over to the.
What's a monkey ball?
It's a knot.
It's a rope knot.
Yeah, it's a rope knot. It's just a massive thing.
Yeah.
You shoot it over,
right?
It catches on. They can hold on to it and mount it.
And then with that, they carry the lines over, right? And they start the fueling. They start the unwrap. If you need to transport passengers, that can be done also during an unwrap. So I thought, wow, that was really neat. It was a cold morning, so I was coming in and out of the fantail back on the hangar. On a cruiser, the fantail is a hangar deck. It's a landing deck for helos because each ship had a couple of helos on board. So I was walking in and out of there watching this thing, and then I would get cold and I'd go back in to warm up. So the next thing you know, I'm getting lightheaded. I'm catching a fever. I'm getting sick. And the worst thing you can do, here's the key to all those watching by, on the podcast. Worst thing you can do is lay down.
Oh.
Once you're sick. Once you lay down.
How do you not lay down? I mean, if you're that sick and dizzy.
You have to stand up. Well, you were on board the Mercy
against
ship.
The wall or what?
I was, yeah. And I did get
that rides
sick.
pretty it's a large ship. It rides pretty well.
Yeah,
but
it was.
You can get sick on large ships.
I did. I did.
And it's one of those feelings, if you've had it, you know it, and you just wish you could die.
Yeah.
I was praying, God, just take me home. I've had enough.
No.
But I got really deathly sick, and my job on board that ship at the time, it was a shakedown cruise. We had just installed a whole new system on board the ship, which I don't really want to talk about as far as the system goes, but it was a brand new system, and our job was to shake it down and teach the crew how to troubleshoot this system. So my job was to go around and put faults into the system so the crew could then find the fault and repair the fault.
So it was like a training exercise.
It was a shakedown cruise and a training exercise for the crew.
So the shakedown is like you install something new and then you put it through vigorous testing.
Right. Then we run it through the ringer.
Oh, interesting.
Basically.
Wow.
So anyway, I got sick. I was deathly sick. And they said, Paul, you got to get up and you got to do your job. And I said, yeah, I know, man. So I carried a bucket everywhere I went. And I would sit there in the back of the ship as it's rocking and rolling. And I would I'd barf in the bucket. And then you put a circuit card in, take the good one out, put the faulted one in. And let them
don't lay down. Just
get
get a bucket and just
down.
keep puking in the bucket. That's great.
And then,
what he should have done was stand at the fantail and look at the horizon.
What I should have done was go to sick
I've heard
bay.
of that one. All right.
Well,
That one too.
I
That makes
tried
more
that.
sense.
But when the ship is rocking and rolling and it's a cloudy day and you can't see the horizon, that doesn't really work too well. Anyway, long story short, after about a day or two of this, I'm saying, finally I went down to sick bay and somebody says, man, you need to go down to see the doc at sick bay. So I went down. He gave me this little blue pill. He said, take this and you're going to be fine.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you, in a couple hours, that little blue pill knocked that thing out of me. And I was eating with the wardroom and the captain that night. So that was good.
That's nice.
That was nice about being a civilian. I did 8 years active in the military.
Oh, 8 years. So when did you leave the military?
So I left in 83.
83. Okay.
All right. I was separated in 83 and then picked up again by the Department of Navy in, 3 years, 86. I think they picked me up. They needed a navigation aid down at the Navy shipyard. And the equipment they needed was what I had, what we called an NEC in. It's your qualification to work on that equipment. So I actually went to school for this one TACAN system. So I started down the shipyard working for tactical air navigation.
Okay. And how long you did that for?
29 years.
Oh, wow.
Well, I went from working in the shipyard and then being picked up as a calibration technician in the shipyard's Cal Lab, and then the Naval Surface Warfare Center Cal Lab picked me up, and then I switched over, went to them, became a GS level. So I went from a worker grade, WG level, and then switched over to a GS level, and then worked for them for the next couple of years.
Wow.
And from there, the jobs would switch depending on what they needed me to do. So.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your service. I know Veterans Day is coming up in the next week, and if those of you watching, if you've never done this, you really just need to go and thank a veteran.
Absolutely.
You need to go and they got the hats on a lot of the times. You don't have to go around asking them. You just see the hat, extend your hand, and say thank you for your service. It goes a long way. Well, but with this, Veterans Day coming up, there is something I do want to touch on, especially in today's society. We just got through the elections, and it's crazy, right? And there's always, everyone's playing the blame game, like you're this and you're that, and and then we got this whole idea of Christian nationalism, and churches can't have anything to do with politics. And I just wanted to hear kind of your heartbeat on the situation in the issue that our country just went through when it comes to, as a Christian, when is that line in the sand drawn? How far is too far?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what nationalism is first,
go ahead.
if that's okay. So the idea of Christian nationalism is this idea that our identity as Christians and our identity as Americans is so combined that everything we do as a Christian and everything we do as a country should be interrelated. Now, a lot of people are critical of that because they say, obviously church and state should be separated, and God has nothing to do with politics. And so some people can take it really far, and some people can say, oh no, Christians shouldn't be involved at all in politics, shouldn't be involved at all in the country. And then on the other side of it, you have Christian patriotism, which says, even though the country may not be run as a Christian country, we can still, as Christians, be in support of our country. And just, go to parades and serve in the military, but that it's not going to define who we are as Christians being Americans, or define what it means to be American just because there's Christians in America, if that makes sense. So what would you say is your take on that? And I'd love to hear from you, Nate. I don't think...
So for the line in the sand, I've always equated it, whenever we enlist in the service, we start off, everyone, no matter officer or enlisted, you always take an oath. Mm-hmm. And in the oath, you swear an allegiance to America, and you swear allegiance to those appointed over you, but ultimately it falls down to swearing allegiance to the Constitution and what it's based on. So if any unlawful order is given to me by people above, the unlawful order, the one that contradicts what the Constitution tells me to do, is by me, I am free to neglect it, right? So like if an officer, for example, comes to me and says, hey, you need to go kill a civilian, according to the Constitution, that's murder. Like they're not combatant. It's not something I need to follow. So I can neglect that order. And with this idea, I use it in my Christian life as well. The Bible being the Constitution. So God tells me where the line is I can go up to. And then if someone in the nation says, hey, you need to do this, I'm sorry, no, my Constitution tells me I need to do this, and this is what I stand by. And there is nothing wrong with, in my opinion, with serving. In fact, it takes a very special person to serve. And if you're a Christian, you better be sure you're called to go into the service. It's not an easy life. I started off as a Christian, and I walked away. I was very devout. I was talking with God daily. He told me to go into the service. I had an aneurysm within the first 3 months of being in. The first 4 months of being in. I was on a deathbed. He healed me, and I still decided to walk away from Christ, right? And so when I came back to Christ, I came to the realization, like, it's more important that I follow what he's telling me to do instead of listening to what the authorities that he put in place, yes, but what they're saying is unlawful because they're human. Like, I can give an unlawful order without being cognitive of it, right? I need to have the guideline of what is lawful for me and what is unlawful to do. So I bring that into my Christianity. Like, if someone says, hey, like, you need to go do this, and be like, no, God told me that it works this way, and this is the chain of command I follow. And that's my idea on how to be patriotism with Christianity, I guess.
Mr. Maris, how do you feel about, if someone comes up to you and says, I want to go into the military, but I don't think that Christians should be in the military? And I know Nate just touched on it, but just in your opinion, what would you say about that?
No, I'll say run. Go.
Like go into or go out?
No, go into. And like he said, I believe the same way. I grew up in a very, very strict Christian, Latino, countryside family. So you imagine it was very, very strict. Okay? And if you were a Christian, you could not be a policeman because you were carrying a gun.
Right.
And that's the way I saw it. But as I grew up, and when I joined, I was so afraid of telling my parents that I wanted to join. Okay, and
how did that go about?
How did it come? It was my little brother who was like 16 at the time wanted to join. So he had a friend who was in church and but it was in the National Guard. Took him to the recruiter, and the recruiter said, "Oh, you're not done with high school. You cannot join." So they came home. My brother was so sad, and I told his friend, "Well, Brian, why don't you bring the recruiter here? I want to join." And,
wow.
And he's like, "Okay, I will." A week later, the recruiter is sitting in my porch back home. And I was like, "Oh my God, you did it." And so my parents come out and they knew what was happening. And the recruiter asked my father, would you let your daughter join the National Guard, being, Christian? He said, "She can. It's no problem.
Wow.
I don't want her in the future to come and say, 'Mom, Dad, I didn't do this because you didn't let me.'" Okay? And she's a Christian. She already knows what she has to follow. She has the Bible. She knows what the rules are. So now it's her way. Now she is the one who has to decide what to do. Salvation is individual. My parents were not going to save me. My pastor doesn't save me.
Right.
The person next to me, no. It's me, a relationship, me with God. And I said, good. 6 months later, I'm shipping out to Fort Jackson now, South Carolina.
And you never look back.
And I never
26
look back.
years? How many years were you?
No, 22.
22 years, wow.
And I never looked back. And I really enjoyed my time, and I loved
That's
it.
awesome.
And people criticized me. When I went to church, I talked to my pastor.
I want addresses.
We talked to my pastor before he left, and he said, "No, you cannot do it, blah, blah, blah. And are you going to wear pants?" I said, my parents said, "Yeah. Do you think my daughter is going to crawl?" So, all those things came into play. But that didn't take me away from God. In the contrary, it brought me closer to God because, coming from where I came from and coming to the United States and joining and being in a training with many people from many races and it was like a shock for me, a culture shock for me.
Sure.
But then it brought me closer to God because I was seeing how they reacted, how they talked, how they were. I'm like, God, this is not what I learned. This is what I want to follow. Hey.
Was it popular as in Puerto Rico to join? Because I feel like being an island, you sometimes there's that separation from the mainland, and you feel like, and I've heard it before that well, we just do our thing, you do your thing.
No,
was that the case back then?
No, there were, but mostly guys.
Oh,
there were like my first 5 years that I was with the MPs, it was about 150 guys and only 2 girls.
Oh wow!
In the whole unit. So usually girls were more maybe in the hospital setting, like I was later. Sense. But it was mostly the guys, the boys.
So I've known you for quite some years now, but I feel like there's a lot of layers to you that I just don't know. For you to survive in an environment like that, being one of 2, that's to me that there's a layer to you that I don't think I want to tap into that. I'll just talk to your kids and they'll probably tell me.
And of all those 150 guys, you got with the instructor. So
and he wasn't even in my unit. He was from somewhere else. But I guess it was my prayer to God. It's not that I wanted a soldier because my mom said, "Well, you're now there. Maybe you find a husband." And I said, "No, there are a bunch of drunks."
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what that was my view of them. That was
Pastor
my view.
Carlos wasn't one of those, right?
And he what? No, he was not.
Good.
No.
Maybe it was pre-pastor.
And I said, no, I don't want to marry a soldier. But, my prayer was, God, I want a Christian guy and blah, blah, blah. This is how I want it. And this is how God gave him to me. Exactly the same steps that I asked for. That's what he did for me.
I'll tell you what. That's why I love your testimony. That's beautiful.
Now, I love what you said, pre-pastor. Now, I believe, were not saved when you first joined. That's correct. So what was that difference for you? Because you two obviously were saved when you joined the military. Now, what was the difference for you?
Right, because we raised Nathan in the church. Right. In fact, we used to leave him behind sometimes.
Yeah.
We forgot him.
I spent more time sleeping under pews.
Yeah, I found him a few times.
I spent more time sleeping under pews than I did in my life.
I was not saved.
So what was the military experience like for you as, obviously
from
not
my mindset.
Let's keep this like PG.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't go crazy here, but
yeah.
just I would love to hear a contrast to their obviously
Right.
having
My
the Bible
mindset,
as a moral concept.
My whole desire, let's face it, I was always a slacker. Whether I was in Boy Scouts, whatever, I never really put myself forward to make an effort. You know what I'm saying? I was a skater. I was a guy that would always skate by. I would do just enough to make things work.
He would grab a clipboard to make it look like he was busy.
Yeah, sometimes we would walk around with a ball.
I've actually seen you with clipboards before. Now I know.
They won't ask you what you're doing because they look like I'm just looking for hardware.
Yeah, I'm taking inventory.
Anyway,
I do that every time my wife comes in the room. I just pick up a piece of paper or something.
and act like you're working.
Yeah, exactly.
But
She's like, "Oh, I don't want to bother you."
yeah, I was a slacker, and I thought, well, growing up in Philadelphia, I was born and raised in Philly, and I thought and it was at the end of the Vietnam War. They hadn't canceled the draft yet, and they had what's called a delayed entry program. So I had actually joined the military as soon as I turned 17 in February of '74. I was already enlisted while I was still a senior in high school.
Oh, really?
And I was preparing to go into boot camp. And my only goal was just to get out of Philadelphia. I had no problem defending my country. And if I had to, and if they sent me to Vietnam, I would have went.
Okay.
Because it's God, it's country, it's duty, right, and family.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it. My duty was I joined when you raise your hand and they swear you in, then you are in for 6 years.
The way I look at it, the way I see it, is that you served. Mm-hmm. And end of the day, you served. And if there was a war that they would have launched you into,
I would have went.
You would have went, and you probably wouldn't have had a choice. But you knew that when you signed the dotted line.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Most of the guys that I know in the service, like what you're saying, right? Like if we are to go to war, at a drop of the hat, like every single person, and it's a strange thing in the service when we're talking about when I'm still in currently, but when I was active over in California with NMCB5, our commanding officer was constantly telling us, "Oh, we're going to go to war soon. We're going to go to war soon." And the only thought that came through my head was, there's no one else I'd rather go to war with than the guys that were standing next to me, because they do become family. And like, there's one thing that the military did to all of us, I believe, is like, whether you leave the military and get out, or if you stay in, there's a camaraderie that's built that no matter where you go, as soon as you meet another veteran, it's like your brothers. Right. Like you guys known each other for your entire life.
Even if they're Marines.
Even if they're Air
Navy.
Force.
Or Army.
We were Navy. Or Army. And Army.
No.
I have, it's funny because there is a camaraderie and a respect between the branches.
Although we do pick on each other constantly.
We do pick on each other when you're in.
And have great football games.
I've worked with Marines. I actually worked with Seabees when I was stationed on Diego Garcia. I've never worked with Army. I never ran into situations where I had to
I've worked with a lot of Army, a lot of Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard.
Right.
You name it,
But
I've worked with the branch.
Yeah, there are cross-training events that take place.
Oh, even with so when I was in Japan, we did cross training with the Japanese military, and then we would send guys up to Korea to do airfield damage repair training with the Korean military, the South Korean military. So like, and even with those guys, even though there's a language barrier, obviously I don't know Japanese, but like the camaraderie between those branches, like between even foreign militaries, is something that I've never met even in civilian life. Like, no matter what company I've worked for, there's nothing like the camaraderie you meet within the military. It's absolutely amazing.
It's like an unspoken
respect
thing. It's a respect issue.
Well,
because you know what they went through, and you know what you've went through.
Speaking of respect, and this is where I want to draw the conclusion today. Speaking of respect, I feel like society as a whole has lost respect for veterans.
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh,
do you see that?
Without a doubt.
And so, with that being said,
don't get me on that one because I've experienced that.
I'm going to save you for last. Then. But I do want an opinion on. But this is the opinion I want. How can we, as people who have not served, show the proper honor and respect for those who have served?
Well, and if I could just add something to fuel the fire a little bit for some of you.
Oh no,
I know, no, but if I want to look at Romans 13 because there's a bit of a discussion on this, and just a couple verses here. It says that the one in authority is God's servant for your good, but if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Now, this talks about submitting to authority, but some people will take that and say that as Christians, we have no part in that it's the government's job to do whatever the government will, but we are not to be that sword. We're just supposed to submit to them. Now, I think in people believing that, there can be a severe loss of respect for especially Christians who go into the military. So if that could just fuel you guys in a little bit in how you answered this question.
Would like to start.
If there were no Christians in the military, how would it be? Because Christians bring a high thinking of morale and this and that, and they still, not great, but there are those who stand on where they believe. So if we were not there in the midst of what's happening, so there would be nobody giving them an example, being an example to them. Okay, right. Like I remember one of the things that I got when I joined. Many of the girls that went to basic training with me, and the guys that went to the other training, they went in as young people. They never smoked, but they were there, and that's where they learned to smoke. Okay, but when they would come to me or to some of the other girls, because as a Christian, you go somewhere, you look for other Christians that line up with you what you're thinking, and that's what I did. And they would come to you and like, come on, let's go have a smoke. Well, that's where you have then a way to bring in what you believe, okay? And I would say, well, no, I don't need that. That's not gonna do this. Or if it was Sunday, time to go to church, come on, let's go to church. And you set the example, and I would take some of them with me to church.
You see what she's hitting on, though? People look at Christianity like a religion, and it's not. It's a relationship. Mm-hmm. That's what changed my life. Mm-hmm. You don't act moral because that's what your religion tells you. You're that way because of God living in you that makes you moral.
Yeah.
So
right.
What she was saying is 100% true. When I joined the service, I had the aneurysm, and I had my rate, but I was out of where I was supposed to be, and I was placed in Gulfport, Mississippi, where it was just me, no one else. And I was still talking to God, and I was still praying. And then the relationships I had at home started falling apart. And then the distance between me and my family started growing because I wasn't in constant communication. I wasn't growing with them, and I wasn't there seeing their life continue on without me. And with all of this going on, I'm in a new place, living by myself with no friends, no one around me. And I wish that I had somebody who would take me to church, who would talk to me, who would be, hey, let's stay away from these things. But instead, what came over was a depression. And the only thing I knew, or the only thing that I thought that would help it, because even with my relationship with God, though I was talking to him, I didn't feel him like I did when I was here. I didn't have the open communication like I did when I was here. I didn't have my parents leading me and guiding me. I didn't have my brother or my sister talking to me about it either. It was me. I became an island, and around me there were no Christians, not that I knew of, because I never reached out for the help, and no one ever reached into me. And then the people that I fall into was my best friend there's this lesbian girl I worked with in the galley, and we became great friends. And then I started making friends with the people in the galley, and they were smokers. So I started picking up smoking because I was hanging out with them. Why not? And then from there, it just went downhill. And it came to the point where I was borderline alcoholic. I was smoking like 2 packs a day, easy. I was probably one of the worst sinners you could probably ever meet. You would look at me and be like, "This was a Christian? I can't believe that." Like it's a slippery slope. And what brought me out of it is my wife and I, we got married in the military, and we were going to have a child. And this is before we got married. So when I found out she was pregnant, I was like, okay, we need to get married because this is the right thing to do. And I want to support this child, and I want to support you, and I'm going to take responsibility for these actions. But we went through a miscarriage, and it was the hardest thing that we've ever experienced. I can't explain the kind of pain that comes with it. But the only thing, what brought me back to Christ was her saying, hey, I know, like, she grew up as a Mormon, so she had an idea of what Christ was or who Christ was. And she was like, we need to find a church. And I was like, I know this. I know God. And there's points throughout my career where I was so lost in depression, but the Spirit comforted me still. Like, even when I left, the Spirit, there was one time, like, I was in my room, I was massive in debt. I didn't know what was going on, and I've rock bottom. And the Spirit, like in Romans, like the Spirit literally interceded through me, for me. And I had no control over it. And it was something that was unreal, and it sparked my relationship with Christ for a bit. And then what really brought it full center was the loss that we experienced. And the only person that was able to comfort us was Christ. But if I had someone like Damaris with me before any of that ever happened, like, it's the pain that I felt, the loneliness that I felt probably never would have came about. But I'm a firm believer that I went through these things because Christ wanted to grow something. Christ wanted to do something in my life and give me an experience that I can relate to other people with. Not only can I relate to veterans, not only can I relate to people who are feeling lost in depression, not only can I relate to someone who's like, the only way out is to take that drink. There's a myriad of people that I can talk to and be like, I understand where you're coming from.
So it like takes our experiences, but
yes,
even the experiences that we create for ourselves, he could take that and turn it for his glory.
Christ is amazing, man.
Every single time. I love the fact that your entire family is involved in church. I love it. And your kid is a wrecking ball. Let me tell you.
They both
you hear
are.
A big boom,
it's Sammy.
Yeah, it's probably Sammy.
It's
now
Sammy.
there's another Samuel in the church, so he needs a wrecking ball.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
We got a few wrecking
And
balls.
another Rosie.
This is true. Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
Your family is amazing. And I love that your family, we have families that you didn't come in as a Christian when you started serving. You fell away from the Lord. You came in as a Christian. At the end of the day, you are all serving God with your families at this moment. That's so vital to know.
Yeah, God really is good.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
There's no way on God's green earth I should be alive right now with all the stupid stuff that happened in the military. Like, you get into some trouble in the military.
You were scared to
like,
death
even,
too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
But I mean, like, even like, I'm knowing the military, you probably got into some stuff too. Nothing like ridiculous, but like, you just get into some crazy situations where you're just like, there's no way I should be alive. Like, it's just.
Well,
and it's everyday activity.
Yeah.
I was electrocuted climbing a telephone pole once.
Man.
I fell off the back of a pier one time. I was in a truck accident that flipped
Oh
over.
my
So
goodness. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a lot
you
of
get
broke my whole right
You get
hand.
into some stuff.
I'm sure there's a lot of mishaps, but I think the one cool thing that I wasn't expecting with this conversation is the through line of relationships. You know, I think that you all had relationships that started, relationships that grew, and the relationship with God and civilian life. I think I never realized how connected those three are. The relationship with obviously the brotherhood of the military serving together, but also how the Christian military who are coming in change that dynamic and how important that is, and how that relationship with the family back home and Americans who are not serving, and it's really all connected. So when we think about people who are disrespectful of the military, who don't want to serve, I think they're not realizing how that bond already exists. The relationship with God, the people, and the military. How it's all connected already. And it's really just a choice of whether we'll accept that connection or ignore it. And I think you guys have really brought that light today in a beautiful way.
So just answer this in conclusion. Does it mean something when people come up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service? Does it actually mean something to you? Be honest.
Can I field this one first? I hate it.
Oh, really?
You're not a veteran yet. You're still active.
Hold on. The only reason why I hate it is because the exchange can be so awkward.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say when someone says, "Oh, thank you for your service"? Oh, you're welcome. Like, it feels strange because I'm not the sole person doing it. Like, it's not solely on me. It's it's the brotherhood that does it. Right? It's like, I will welcome it and I will never turn anyone away from it. And it's to a point. There is a point where I'm like, yeah, this is nice. Like, I'm being appreciated for what I gave up, like, because it's a sacrifice. But yeah, me personally,
I think that's where the whole family atmosphere comes in, where I didn't do this, we did this.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're taking sole credit for something you did as a unit. And it's disrespectful to almost take that credit.
Yeah, and the exchanges are so short anyway. So it's just I don't know. It's always been weird.
It just feels awkward and clunky.
I've never thought.
I know I haven't. Certainly not.
That's actually new for me. And
it could take you by surprise.
I'll never say thank you for your service again. It's just that's over for me.
But don't worry, you're always welcome for it.
Right. I feel as an older generation that who have been out in the military. How do you feel?
Well, it's not that I'm expecting it to be done, but if they do it, I usually say I was honored.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was honored, and my pleasure. And that's why I say, and if I see a soldier, like yesterday, I was in Washington with my daughter, and we were leaving the hotel parking, and two soldiers were coming into the parking, and she opened the window and she said, "Thank you for your service." And they were like, "Oh, thank you," and I was like, "Oh, thank you for doing that, Monica. I know they appreciate that." So, so like I say, it's not that I expected to have it done. If they don't do it, it's fine. But if they do it, that's what I respond.
Yeah, my normal response now is, "Thank you for your continued support."
That's very nice. Very nice. Yes.
What are you doing?
Because then it gets to the awkward situation for them. Like, "Oh, you're welcome, I guess."
Are you thanking me?
You turn the table.
I've listened. When I had a coworker, I worked at the VA with veterans patients for 25 years, and I loved my veteran soldiers, my patients. But I had a coworker whose husband had been in the military. He was a veteran. She worked there too, but she said, "I don't care about the veterans.
No.
If they expect me to say thank you for the service, I didn't ask him to go fight for me." That was a response, and I disliked that.
Yeah,
Every time she said that, I said, "But how could you say that?
And working
Your husband was a veteran. Why are you working here at the VA?" Because she couldn't work anywhere else. But that every time she said that, and she said it many times, it hurt me so much that she would say, "I didn't ask him to go fight for me.
I didn't ask Jesus to die on the cross for me."
That's right.
It was like,
we'll leave that one.
I had a different take than them. That when I was in uniform back at it was like I say, the end of Vietnam, before they pulled out in 75.
Yeah, not a good light for them.
I was actually spit on in airports.
Really?
I could not wear my uniform through the airport.
Well, this is a post.
We were called baby.
Yeah.
We were called baby killers.
Baby killers.
I never killed a child in my life.
Right.
I'm totally pro-life.
Right.
I would not kill a child. Matter of fact, they're the ones that kill the babies, and we're labeled as baby killers. Wow. But I'm walking through an airport in LA. I'm getting spit on, and these are by Hare Krishna guys, right? And you just want to pop these guys, but you can't because you're in uniform.
And you represent the entire nation.
And I wasn't saved. I would have popped them in 2 seconds. But you're in uniform, you represent the country, and after Vietnam, most of the veterans were treated so poorly in this country. Even the VAs didn't want to take in Vietnam vets. Then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, everybody loves them. Well, at that point, nobody cared for us, right? And it was a cynical attitude on our part. Like, yeah, I didn't ask to be there either. I didn't ask to.
So what's your
fight
reaction
for anybody
when people come up to you now and say thank you for your service?
It started as cynical at first.
That's interesting.
Because like, where were you when I really needed you?
Wow.
Where was your support when all these men coming back from Vietnam really needed you? Where were you then?
Wow.
Right? A couple of years later, after the Gulf War, all of a sudden everybody,
I wasn't alive.
everybody accepts it. It's like a pet peeve.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, everybody cares about you.
Wow.
Right? I am glad now that the country's learning to appreciate the veterans.
Yeah.
That thrills me to no end. And when people say it to me, my response is similar to my son's. I say, well, thank you for supporting us. But to me, if you really want to support the veterans, then do something for veterans. Get involved in the guys who get their arms blown off and their legs blown off, or the ones who lose their husbands and fathers.
Wow.
You know, do something.
Yeah.
Donate to an organization that supports these families, because the government, we're giving more money to illegal aliens than we're giving to veterans who serve this country. And that's another.
So the sacrifice that we all gave was something that can never get back.
It's something that we did voluntarily. Nobody asked me to serve, and nobody asked them to serve. We did it.
We put it
because
down,
we saw a need, and believe it or not, I believe God motivated all of our steps. I would have never found the Lord if it were not for the military.
Yeah, I would never came
and
back
my
to the Lord.
experiences
And at the end of the day, we wouldn't have the freedoms we have in our country right now if it wasn't for those who served.
Right.
At the end of
And
the
it's
day.
the same thing with Jesus Christ. Nobody ever thanks Jesus Christ for his service.
Oh, come on.
And look what he's done for us.
That's right.
Still doing for
People
us.
don't even realize what Jesus Christ has done for you by dying on the cross. You're living in a country that was founded on the Word of God all the way back to the Mayflower Compact and all the way up to present day. It was founded on Jesus Christ. The Pilgrims came here with one goal. That was to print Bibles and spread the gospel. And this country has been built on that, and we forget our roots. How quickly. And we need to thank Jesus Christ for the country, for the rights that our Constitution protects, our God-given rights that were given us by God Almighty, that the Constitution was designed to protect on a personal level. So we don't even thank Jesus Christ for all he's done for us. And half this country can't even acknowledge him. And they don't even realize they're benefiting from his sacrifice, whether they know it or not.
And you know, that what a great way to, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, right? And it's so cliche. What are you thankful for? What are you thankful for? And let me just challenge those who are listening. What are you thankful for? And then ask yourself the question, why do I even have this?
Wow.
I look at it as you have those who have served, and then you have the God that gave you the liberty that you have to make the decisions that you've made to put you in the circumstances that you're in. So before you're thankful for your cars, before you're thankful for your house, before you're thankful for the freedoms you have with your family, be thankful for the God that has blessed you to be in a country where people die so that you can have those freedoms. I want to thank you. You all are honestly, you're inspirational and multi-generational. Your insight is honestly, it's unmatched, and I'm so appreciative of your lives. And I would still encourage everyone that's watching, thank a veteran. Thank a veteran. You don't know what they've been through. How much time does it really take to just look at somebody, extend your hand, and say, thank you for your service? I promise you they won't be as cynical as
it's still appreciative. It's still appreciative, I promise.
But they do. They appreciate it. And sometimes they're caught off guard, and you may say, well, that was embarrassing. No, they're caught off guard because they get a lot of flack, right? They get a lot of flack from the different societies and the different people groups that just don't understand what it means to even sacrifice themselves. And that's the truth of it. Because once they understand what it means to sacrifice, they'll understand what it means to be appreciated for that sacrifice. And so just when you see somebody with that veteran's hat on or wearing the uniform, just extend your hand and say thank you for your service. And right now I want to thank all of you for your service, and I want to thank you for being a guest on the discussion, and we'll have you back for maybe a different discussion in the future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And for all of you who are watching, I want to encourage you to subscribe to YouTube, like, share, make sure you just follow all the content that we've been putting out and that we'll continue to put out in the future. And I look forward to you joining us next time on the discussion. God bless you. Have a great night.